Bore da, good morning everybody and welcome to the second day of the Wales Biodiversity Partnership Conference. Croeso I ail ddiwrnod cynhadledd partneriaeth Bioamrywiaeth Cymru. Fy enw I ydy Manon Lewis a dwi'n gweithio fel rheolwr bioamrywiaeth a gwydnwch ecosystemau I Cyfoeth Naturiol Cymru. Ac mi fyddai'n hwyluso'r sesiwn bore yma. My name is Manon Lewis and I'm the Biodiversity and Ecosystems Biodiversity Manager for Natural Resources Wales, and I'll be chairing the session this morning. So without more to do, I'd like to introduce you to Gill Bell, who's going to give us a presentation regarding marine litter. She's going to take us through her presentation this morning, and then at the end there'll be an opportunity to ask a few questions. So without more to say, Gill, I'll pass over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Manon. Bore da. Apologies for those who've joined who were thinking they were going to get a workshop. I decided that an hour wasn't long enough for a workshop to be able to give you any background information, those who may not be up to date with what's happening with marine litter, and try to squeeze in a workshop. So what we've done instead is there's 3 questions for you on Sligo, so hopefully they'll work quite well, and then there'll be an opportunity at the end for anybody to ask any questions. So for those who don't know, I'm Gill Bell, Head of Conservation Wales at Marine Conservation Society, and I have to thank Fiona Mitchell for help preparing this presentation. A little bit about MCS. If you don't know who we are, shame on you. No, we're obviously the marine charity that focuses on, we have 3 key areas that we work on, which is mostly ocean recovery, fisheries and aquaculture, as well as clean seas. And part of the clean seas work is marine litter that we work on. And we do have a lot of people at the heart of basically everything we do is people orientated to try and get people out and enjoying the marine environment and respecting it and taking part in activities that they enjoy, but also things that benefit the environment. So we engage a lot of people. I'll talk a little bit about our Great British Beach Clean, which I'm hoping most of you have heard of, and we also do things like sea search dives. So if you're a diver, if you're interested in learning more about how every dive can be a sea search dive, you can collect data for us, because as you all know, collecting data is very expensive, and underwater data is even more so. So everything that you can do, if you're a diver, if you want to get involved, then please contact MCS and we'll be able to put you in contact with the local coordinator. So we're going to show a little video next. So Adam, if you can get ready, please. And we're going to just show you a little bit about our Great British Beach Clean, which took place between the 18th and 25th of September this year. So over to Adam.
I would like to say a massive thank you to all of you who've helped with the Great British Beach Clean this year. You've made a massive difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Great British Beach Clean like no other, obviously because of restrictions. We normally get as many people out on the beaches as we can, but we changed our format this year because we were aware that it could only be small family groups, and we didn't want to to break any restrictions. So you'll notice that on this slide we have 99% of inland cleans found drinks litter. So we asked people to do local to their area. So it's the first time that we've done inland cleans, because obviously it's a very different year to normal. But we will come back to some of the main items that we found, and drinks litter is one of them that I will be highlighting later on. So if you think and remember that stat, 99% of inland cleans found some sort of drinks litter, which is an average of 30 drinks found, 30 drinks or litter found within 100 metres on every beach. I've got a little few stats here about what we found. So we normally do a top 5, so I've just got 2019 and 2020 comparisons here. And a couple of things I want to raise to you is always the top item is plastic polystyrene up to 50 kilometres. 50 centimetres. That's because those are the plastic pieces that have broken down that we don't know what they are. So they're always the top thing that we find in the top 10, and they're always the greatest source that we find because we just don't know what they are anymore. But if you take a look at some of the things, you'll notice I'll be pulling up things like caps and lids, wet wipes and cigarette stubs that we found in 2020 and highlighting some of those things. And also it may not have made it into the top 5, but glass is one of the other things, and packets I'll be mentioning later. So the top 10, as you can see, almost always the top 10 is 70 to 80% plastic. And if you can see that we've got a top 10 of 2019 and then a top 10 of 2020, and everything in the top 10 2020 is plastic. So what we need to do is to move on to a circular economy. For those who don't know about it, we're very proud in Wales that we have such a high recycling rate, but actually recycling is the end of the line really. And one of the things that we've been pushing for is to try to push the circular economy and to make people realise that this piece of plastic that they may get from the supermarket or they may want to throw away actually has a value. And I'll talk a little bit about that value and how you get charged for it when we talk about extended producer responsibility later. But I think everybody knows what the circular economy is, and it boils down to looking from the design to the retailer to the consumer to the reuse, repair, recycling, and then the recycling part. And we should be trying to recycle, and we do have some, Welsh Government have some quite ambitious aims for making sure that we have a circular economy. Oh, we've lost rot off the bottom of here. It's so deep down, it's gone into the ground. So this should be the waste hierarchy. We should refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, then rot. So the recycling bit should come far down, and we're very pleased that Welsh Government seem to be taking on this message. Although they have an ambition to be top in the world for recycling, what we need them to do is to start reducing and reusing. I'm very pleased about these new repair cafes that are setting up around Wales, and we're pushing forward this as part of the green agenda. The thing that's been on everybody's minds over when we were doing Great British Beach Clean, the media just wanted to know about the PPE problem. That was all they kept asking us all through summer. Have you seen an increase in PPE? And we didn't have any data on whether we had seen an increase in PPE. So we were able to look at that. So Adam, over to you again, please.
I am very fortunate that I'm able to live by the coast and be able to swim in the sea regularly. It's made me incredibly appreciative of what an amazing environment it is. It's also made me quite aware of the problems that it faces as far as litter is concerned. It can seem quite overwhelming as an individual to know what part we can play in helping, but something as simple as beach cleaning can make a massive difference. The Marine Conservation Society is an incredible organisation. They help bring awareness, they run great campaigns, and also help with action in protecting our seas and coastal environments.
Thank you. So a little bit about PPE, since everybody's asking about it. On beaches, almost 30% of beaches found some sort of PPE, and we found over 200 items of PPE, and that was not just masks, it was gloves and other things. But on the inland cleans, we found 69% found PPE. And obviously, apart from the health implications to humans, it also can pose a threat to wildlife. And we've already seen images of entangled animals becoming entangled in PPE. I know that everybody, I'm preaching to the converted, nobody would be at this conference who wasn't supportive of making sure that they dispose of their litter properly. But it is a growing concern to us about the amount of people who do inappropriately dispose of PPE, and this can only continue as the pandemic continues. And we just hope that the message gets through that this can have a long-term impact on wildlife, and that it's, you know, we are tackling other sources of litter, and this is a new source that we need to start working on. So one of the things that we've already been working on are deposit return systems, and I really hoped that I would be able to stand up at the end of this government term and say we have a deposit return system in Wales. It was one of the things we asked to put in the manifestos of several parties, and it just seems to have taken quite some time. I'll give you an update towards the end of the presentation on what Welsh Government have said with regard to deposit return systems, but there was this consultation and it was back in last February. Now, I do believe that things would have progressed, obviously, if we hadn't had COVID happen in March, and things may have progressed a bit sooner. So, you know, these are exceptional times. So we know we need a deposit return system. As I mentioned earlier, 30 beverage litter items were found per 100 metres. So that's a couple of steps and you'll find something. And inland, almost 99%, and everybody's seen them. You can't walk down the street without seeing some sort of drinks container. And also glass is commonly found in the top 10 items. So it's one of the things that I want to highlight is that we believe that glass should be included in a deposit return system. I don't have a graph that shows that shows DRS and containers, but as you can see, what we've said is 30 on average, so that's slightly less than 2019. But you have to remember that this is a snapshot over the year, and then also, you know, we're supposed to be in lockdown, so we shouldn't be quite seeing so much because there shouldn't be quite so many people out about, and it's quite scary to think that you know, we are still seeing these massive numbers of deposit return system litter items that could be recycled and reused. So from a country point of view, we're a little bit behind, and it's quite frustrating to me when we have a government that is supposedly so keen on you know, making sure that we get recycling up there, that we haven't yet got a deposit return system. So we had the consultation, and the DEFRA ran it on behalf of Wales, England and Northern Ireland, and what they concluded is that they would need another consultation next year. Why they couldn't just design the first one well enough so that they didn't have to have a second one and we could get them implemented sooner than 2023 is beyond me, because I don't think it's a difficult issue in principle, because I think most people are supportive of it, and I do believe that you know, it's up and running in hundreds of other countries. So why we need a second consultation and why we need this delay is quite beyond me, when we're still seeing incredible numbers of litter. And this litter will be around potentially, not obviously as the item perhaps, but as plastic dust within the environment for who knows how long, thousands of years, and it is impacting animals right the way down the food chain. So a little bit disappointing that we're not a little bit further along on the DRS scale. So this is our first poll. So I hope that you've all used Slido before. If you haven't, then please just go to www.sli.do, and then the event code that you need to put in is 74369. So I'll just give you all a couple of minutes just to get that up. So again, the event code is hashtag 74369. So we go to www.sli.do event.do, and then you can then ask for an event code, and it's hashtag 74369. So I'm about to run this poll. So the question is, would you be prepared to pay for a deposit return system? What would you be prepared to pay? So it's a multi-choice question. You get one answer. Would you be prepared to pay 5p, 10p, 15p, 20p, 25p, or 30p? Oh, 100% at 30p so far. So it's an ongoing poll. So if you could please, oh, very good, thank you. It's great that we can see this online straight away. Thank you very much for responding. Okay, I'll just give it another 30 seconds just in case anybody else hasn't joined in, but please do vote because we will be sending this information and using it when we liaise with Welsh Government. Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. So, next we come to single-use plastics. So everybody knows about single-use plastics and the fact that a lot of them are unnecessary and needed, and we need to reduce them. If we're going to get to this circular economy and we're going to reduce our global impact and footprint, then we need to reduce single-use plastics. So there was a consultation recently by Welsh Government banning certain non-essential plastic items. Now this stems from an EU directive, so Welsh Government were obliged to do this consultation, and so there were 9 items in this. And they're all fairly simple things that we can get rid of. So plastic stem cotton bud sticks, there are cardboard ones on the market, and also if you don't know, you shouldn't really be sticking cotton bud sticks in your ears. It's not good. It compacts the wax even more. So you know, there are uses for cotton bud sticks, but please don't stick them in your ears. And just a little anecdote in that, I'm very sad to say that I have yet to walk on any UK beach and not find a cotton bud stick. That's how prevalent they are. They go straight through the sewage treatment system. You have screen meshes that go down in size to screen through from the sewage waste. And unfortunately, the smallest mesh size is exactly the right size for cotton bud sticks to slip through. So the next time you're on the beach, look for something that might look like a cotton. The cotton bud sticks look like lollipop sticks, but they've got 3 little graduations on the end where the cotton was fastened to, and most of them lose their cotton during the process. So you will find too many of them on the beach. And if you think that has been through the sewage treatment system and you're on the beach maybe having a picnic or walking the dog or going for a swim, and you're swimming around with something that is sewage related debris, we need to ban it. There's no need for it. And if people insist on putting them down the toilet instead of putting them in a bin, at least if they're cardboard, they would start to biodegrade. Cutlery, knives and forks and spoons, all of those things you can get. We all used to go and get chips with a wooden fork. It's not a difficult swap, and the same with the plates, straws. And we can swap those, but one of the things we need to be really careful about is that we don't swap one single-use item for another. And we're trying to promote people to take their own along. You can get little kits now that are made out of little things that you can take yourself, so you don't need to get a single-use item. So you have to be aware of the unintended consequences, and I'll talk about a little bit about that in a moment. So the beverage stirrers, the straws, Sticks for balloons are one of my big bugbears. I set up the Don't Let Go campaign for MCS about 18 years ago or so. You know, what happens to balloons when you let them up in the air? They disappear, they magically disappear. Well, of course they don't. They do come back down. And since then, people have started putting either plastic ties to fasten them with or sticks. So we want those banned. The food containers made of polystyrene expanded foam. I put a petition into last Welsh Government. So 6 years ago, I put a petition in to have those banned. We're just getting to the consultation now. And beverage cups, again, this just says of expanded polystyrene. And then oxydegradable products. I'm not going to go into why oxydegradable products are in there, but suffice to say it's all to do with the issue in that you're swapping one item that could potentially cause harm to the environment for another. So MCS's response to the single-use plastics consultation, they asked, was there anything else you might like included? So we've just listed some of the things that we think should be. So one of them is cigarette plastic filters, and most people may not know that cigarette filters contain plastic. We would like them banned. We've been doing a campaign. We just sent a letter to Welsh Government about this, and we've also sent one to Scottish Government as well, to try and ask for the plastic to be removed. As far as I'm aware, there is no need for there to be plastic within the filter, and it doesn't actually provide any health benefits whatsoever. But when we do the global, we put all of our data into the International Coastal Cleanup, and globally you'll usually find that cigarette filters are the top thing that we find globally on beaches. So we would like those to have been included. We also would like tethered lids. If you remember the statistic on the thing that we find on beaches, almost always in the top 5 items are caps and lids. And this is because when you're doing beach cleans and when your council is doing beach cleans, they're far easier to see a plastic bottle and they can possibly recycle that, but the lids tend to get lost from the bottles. So we do tend to find lots of caps and lids. So if you have this little tether, then at least they're together and they only form one piece of litter rather than 2. We don't want them in the first place, but if they're going to, we have to start, people will always want to buy a drink on the go. So let's have a tethered lid on it. The single-use sachets is another issue, again, particularly around issues around hygiene and COVID. Ideally, we wouldn't like any single-use sachets, but obviously at the moment it's difficult. You can't really have a dispenser that everybody uses. Perhaps people don't feel happy in using that. So if we are going to have the single-use sachets, then we need to make sure that they aren't multi-layered and multi-material so that they're easily recyclable. And packets and wrappers, again, the crisp packets are very, very difficult to recycle at present. So we need to make sure that they're either, if they're not recyclable and they don't have an economic recyclability, then they are removed from the market as well. I mentioned balloons, as in balloon sticks, but we feel that balloons and sky lanterns should also be banned from being released. Sky lanterns can cause a lot of problems because they have a metal frame on them. Sometimes animals can get entangled in them, or they're a fire risk as well, and then there also can be a risk to Coast Guard because people think they're flares. So there's a lot of issues around sky lanterns. And with regard to balloons, one of the only green turtles that we've ever had washed up on UK beaches died because it had a piece of plastic and a balloon blocking its gut. Turtles will actively go towards balloons, and as I say, unless they get up to a very high height where they fracture because of the cold temperatures, they will come back down to earth as whole balloons and will be ingested and could potentially kill animals. So there's no excuse for balloon releases. The Litter Act says that if you drop a piece of, if you drop something, that's littering. Well, if you drop a balloon, it happens to float up in the air, but to me, it's still littering. And then the final thing that we would like are cups. And if you remembered, it just said cups made out of expanded polystyrene foam. Well, no. We need all beverage cups, regardless of what they're for. And actually, what we prefer is for people to have their own cups and to be able to reuse them. Most of us have taken our own coffee cup if pre-COVID, before we were, and we would reuse that. And there's always exceptions to this. You're always out perhaps sometimes, and perhaps you need to go. But there's no excuse for why it should just be expanded polystyrene foam cups. It should be wider than that. So this is the complicated bit. The unintended consequences. The single-use plastic consultation also asked about wet wipes. And wet wipes are a nuisance, without a doubt, because people incorrectly dispose of them down the sewage system. And we've all seen the images of the fatbergs of blocked up wet wipes and fat congealed and causing huge issues. So it's not as simple as banning an item, because if you ban a plastic item, then you potentially run the risk of the alternative causing even greater problems or equal problems. So regenerated cellulose fibres, for example, are the things that some people think, oh, well, we can use them instead of putting plastic. But we know that these may take a very long time to biodegrade. We know, again, banning plastic wet wipes won't change people's behaviour of putting wet wipes down the toilet, and again, depending on what it's made of, it may still cause the flooding and it may still cause the blockage. So there is industry specification of fine to flush, and we would recommend that a lower extended producer responsibility is applied to that, and I'll get on to what extended producer responsibility is. And these are the only ones that are fine to flush, as it says, down the toilet. Everything else should have a label on saying do not flush down the toilet, and it should be very visible. Some of them have a tiny little logo that it's almost impossible to see. And we also recommend, I'm sorry, for some reason the spell check has changed the fecal matter to the American spelling. So anything and any bodily fluids, we would say that we still need wet wipes for, but other things we don't want a get out clause in the legislation where people, for example, the facial tissue wipes and things like that, they're not essential and we don't need them, and they should be banned. Poll time again, please. So if you go to Slido and event code #4369. So the question I'm asking you now is, do you agree with banning these items, these single-use plastic items? And you can tick all the boxes that apply. So those 5 items that I've just gone through: plastic cigarette filters, the tethered lids, the sachets, the plastic wrappers, balloon lanterns. Oh, you're all lovely. Thank you. And if there's any other additional items, please put them in the chat room, and Fionn is noting anything that's written there, and we'll be able to raise that and take it on board any comments. Okay. Everybody's happy with that. We'll go back to the presentation. And thank you so much for taking the time to respond to that. So I mentioned extended producer responsibility before, and this is basically, at the moment, any piece of material or packaging or anything that you buy, a manufacturer makes it, you buy it, and then you're responsible for the collection and disposal of that. So it's estimated that for every pound it costs we, the taxpayer, are paying 90p. And it should be the other way around. The producer should be responsible for it. So this again is another EU directive which is coming in, and it basically means that we shift the responsibility back onto the producer, away from the taxpayer and the government, because at the moment it's all subsidised by us through our taxes, and we don't feel that that's appropriate. I don't want everything that I go to buy smothered in plastic, and I don't have any choice quite often. But if the producer was suddenly made accountable for every single piece of plastic that they produced, they would look to more environmental solutions, and they would perhaps use less packaging. So there's lots of benefits to extend producer responsibility, apart from the sustainability and the obvious one of reducing waste and use of resources. It's both a goal and a process. So it's a goal to become sustainable, but we do have a process to go through. It will mean that people will be innovative and start looking at eco-designing projects to minimise the total environmental impact that they have. And as I've mentioned, currently the system is subsidised by government and paid for by our taxes. And all the pollution and resources and energy consumption and disposal costs are not reflected in the price of the product. I feel that is unacceptable. I think that you probably do as well. Why should we be paying through our taxes for all of this plastic that we don't want and that we're then charged to get rid of? So it shifts these costs from the government and the taxpayer to the producers and the consumers. Now that's an important point, because if the producers have to change their materials and the way that they package things, and they have less costs put on them if they go for an eco solution, which currently costs more, lots of things will happen. First of all, they'll pass those costs on to us, the consumer, because they're a business and they need to. But as been demonstrated elsewhere, because the then market becomes more buoyant with these products and more people start producing them and less produce the plastic alternatives, then those costs reduce. So this is where we are with regard to the country updates. So it involves extended producer responsibility, not only involves packaging on food products, but it's also on electrical waste and batteries and things like that. And there was also a consultation which ran, and we know that it's going to be introduced for packaging in 2023. And it's going to come in through the Environment Bill. And the final proposals, I've left this in because the plan was the final proposals will be consulted on in 2020. Clearly, that isn't happening anymore. But at the same time, we're still getting these overpackaged goods that we don't want. Pour time again, please. So if you can go back to Slido. Now this poll, I was trying to work out whether I could put a cost on this, and I can't. And the question is, we know that more environmentally friendly products and will likely result in a higher cost. So the question is, would you be willing to pay this, given that it's a piece of legislation and it's going to happen? We know that it will be willing to pay. So we are, but how do you feel about that? How do you feel if it was going to be significant? Or would you prefer if it was, insignificant? All of us would. But we need to have extended producer responsibility, and that will impact the cost of things. But I'm hoping that it will have the effect that it will make producers more accountable for the waste that they produce, to think about the life cycles the products that they produce, to maybe, when I was talking about the sachets, instead of having multi-layer, multi-material, they'll go down a route of having things that are much more easy to recycle. Right. Thank you. That's really kind, and that's a lovely statistic to take back to Welsh Government. So thank you very much for that. Okay. Good, thank you. Okay, back to the presentation. So where are we now? The timescales. I've already expressed my frustration at the timescales that some of these things take, and I know that policy takes time, and I know that we have to consult thoroughly, and that we have to make sure that the implications are fully researched, and that people, you know, are not unduly don't suffer undue hardship as a result of that. But we had Blue Planet too. We had David talk about plastics, and the effect was phenomenal in that everybody was suddenly aware. So people do want action now, and we wrote to Leslie Griffiths, who's the minister, with the Great British Beach Clean results, and we do have a meeting with her at the beginning of December to talk about them. And I was quite forthright in the letter in that I said, in the whole of this government term, Welsh Government have done nothing on macroplastics to reduce microplastics going into the marine environment. They have on microplastics, those little microplastic beads that are in cosmetics things, only cosmetic things, so please look out for other things. So the cleaners and things still have those microplastic beads in, so please look out for them. But basically there has been no legislation put forward. And I was really pleased that we managed to get the First Minister out and I have to thank Claire Trotman, who's the Advocacy and Policy Officer at Marine Conservation Society, for managing to get the First Minister out. It's the first time he's come to a beach clean that's taken place on Great British Beach Clean Weekend, and I have to thank very much to Cardiff Rivers and all the other groups who were there, because if you know this site, I call it the Doctor Who beach. It was phenomenal, the amount of litter that was on that beach. So Mark came out and saw for himself, and because obviously we have the barrage there, all of that litter collects, but otherwise it would have been washed out to sea, and that's what happens on most of our rivers, is that it just all washes out to sea. And then is it forgotten about? Perhaps. So I asked Welsh Government specifically for an update on where we were, and I very kindly got a response from them. So an update from them on deposit return systems and extended producer responsibility. So they're working on DEFRA on both the extended producer responsibility and the DRS. Now the second consultation on the preferred options for both schemes will be coming out in early 2021. And I kept that slide in earlier, if you remember, that said we would be looking at the second consultation in 2020. But this has been an exceptional year, and we accept that for COVID. And it's the Environment Bill that will bring these powers and enable Welsh Government to enact them. So this is where we are with the Environment Bill, and because it's Scotland is obviously doing its own thing, but this is England, Northern Ireland and Wales, and this is where we are. So we're looking at the 1st of December will be a committee stage in the House of Commons, and they'll be debating the Environment Bill. So we hope that once that passes, it will give Welsh Government the ability to be able to take DRS and APR forward from a devolvement perspective. And we do hope that means that they can be more ambitious than England and Scotland and Northern Ireland. After all, we do have the Future Generations Act, and we are supposed to be a globally responsible and resilient Wales. So let's show it, and let's be progressive and ambitious in this. An update on single-use plastic from Welsh Government. So the consultation is completed. I showed you there was 9 items, and the Welsh Government team are reviewing them. However, we have run out of time, and this is what I mentioned earlier, and the fact that when I sent the letter to Leslie Griffiths, in that we have no time left in the legislative time frame to be able to pass any further legislation, because we have elections next year. And so the new government will decide on the priorities and manifesto commitments. So this is my next big ask. This is our very shortened version to send to the MS, the members of the Senate, or they were Assembly members if you don't know that they've changed their name. So we have just 9 very simple asks, and I mentioned that what MCS does. So the first is all about ocean recovery, and we want to have healthy seas. So we talk about highly protected sites. We talk about a network including marine conservation zones, and we need all activities that are banned to be banned that are damaging. For fishing, you may have seen that the fisheries bill came through yesterday, and we've been quite disappointed with some of the amendments that were suggested were then taken out of that. So we're quite concerned about the sustainability of the fisheries bill and going forward post-Brexit. So it's not rocket science, any of this. We need to make sure that we're looking on wider biodiversity and not simply managing target species. We need to make sure that fish stocks are up to maximum sustainable yield, and we need to make sure that fisheries are fully documented effectively. So, and remote electronic monitoring cameras for all vessels over 10 would allow us to do that, and inshore vessel monitoring systems on smaller vessels should be rolled out as soon as possible, because currently we don't know where people are. Most of them, we don't know where they're fishing, what they're fishing. We know a little bit about what they're landing, some of them, but very little about quite a lot of the Welsh fisheries. So the Marine Plastics Ask is DRS, extended producer responsibility, and single-use plastics. No surprise there. So those are the things that we would like. And we were also, as I mentioned, about all beverage cups. So it's called the latte levy, but it's not just coffee cups. It's all beverage containers. So a little bit. The title of the talk was, what else can you do? Well, obviously you can join MCS, or you can just attend one of our events. Now, obviously we have Great British Beach Clean, but we do have litter surveys and beach cleans taking place throughout the year, so you can sign up to that. You can sign up to our plastic challenge, and I have done this for 6 years now, and it's very hard. For a whole month I don't buy anything in plastic, and then for the rest of the year I obviously try to minimise the amount of plastic. And it is difficult, without a doubt. I'm very pleased in that we have seen a change in some of the supermarkets and the way that they have been putting fresh fruit and veg out, unwrapped. But because of COVID, some of that has stepped back a little bit. So we do have to balance the needs to make sure that people are safe, but also if we can make sure that if they do have to be in plastic, that the plastic is easily recyclable and there's facilities to be able to do that. I was going to put a whole lot of top tips for plastic free, but I imagine I'm talking to the converted here. So just a very few things. Please try and do the plastic challenge, or even just think about it a day, a week, a month. The reusable cups, if you can try and ask, there's no issue. There's no issue during COVID for you not to reuse your plastic cup. There are retailers who have a metal tray that you put your reusable cup in, and so they don't touch your cup, and then they just can fill it up underneath their machine and then hand it back to you in the tray, and you can lift it out. There's no contamination there. And one of the things I wanted to talk about also was to buy something like a filter bag for your washing. If you're not aware of this, it's a huge issue. So every time you do a wash, you are putting microplastics in and microfibers into the marine environment. And so anything that you put in that's synthetic should go into something like a guppy bag, and every time you wash, it will collect the microplastics, and so they won't go into the waterways. It's a very simple thing to do. They're not cheap, they're about £25, but that's it. Once you've invested in it, that's it. But we can't rely on people just doing that themselves. So we've got a campaign at the moment. It's on our website if you would like to add your voice to call for all new washing machines to be fitted with microfibers and to retrofit commercial machines. So obviously we can't go out and say to everybody, you have to have this new microfiber filter fitted in your existing machine, but what you can do is buy something like a guppy bag. And then we talk about PFAS. If anybody has seen the film with Mark Ruffalo, you'll know that this is a huge issue, and MCS is working more in the chemicals area, and again we're trying to raise this is an issue. One of the key things that we're quite concerned about is the REACH legislation. Is something that we get through Europe at the moment, and they look at all these different chemicals, and we get a lot of value out of this REACH, and unfortunately so far we've not had commitment that we will be part of REACH when we leave the EU. So it's something that we do need to work on, because there are a lot of very persistent chemicals within the marine environment and that we use on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, if you can try to buy biodegradable, ethical products, then that would be helpful because then you're reducing the amount that you put in. So on to the government election. We have an election next year. I can talk to the politicians all I want, but you as constituents are the people they listen to. So please contact your local or the leader of the relevant party and ask them what they're doing. Because it's only by making yourself heard now, because they're just finalising their manifestos, that these are important issues to you, whether it is marine protected areas or fisheries or whatever, or if it is litter, just make them known. So I would ask them, what are they doing? What's in their manifesto for circular economy? How are they looking to reverse biodiversity loss? And, how can they develop transformational change? We've got a climate emergency, we've got an environment emergency. We need to see that reflected in this new green recovery that's being developed by the government, and we need it to be seen in the forthcoming government. So that is my ask. Please contact your member of the Senate or the local party, whomever you support, or even if you don't support, ask them what they're doing, because it's only by doing that we will affect change in the next government. Thank you. So we're going to go to
Thank you
now.
very much, Gill.
So I'll just escape out my screen.
Yeah, Gill, if you can stop sharing by clicking on, there should be a button on that pad. You can come back into Adobe then.
Is that
Gill, thank you very much. I'll try again. I think there might be a bit of delay in my Are we cutting across each other again, Gill? Sorry, it's man on here. So thank you very much for that very informative, thought-provoking and interactive session there. That was incredibly good, and you kept my attention throughout that slot. So thank you. Crikey, there's so much for us to think about and to do. And as you said, whereas individuals, we can do a lot as well. So we've got a few questions here. So we've got one from Joe asking, will tethered plastic lids be acceptable on glass bottles for recycling? Or accepted?
I would suggest, just off the top of my head, it's a really good question. I would suggest that with glass bottles you could have metal lids, and that would be better because metal is usually more recyclable than plastic. So we could still have we're trying to reduce plastic here, and with the tethered lids, it's a good question. In my gut reaction is that we should have metal lids, because they then can be recycled easier. If we have plastic ones, then yes, they can. I have seen glass bottles with tethered plastic, but plastic, if it was a single material polymer, it's easier to recycle. But yes, really good question. Something that one of the consultations will probably, and there'll be lots of discussions about. So thank you for that. And we'll, if you want to email me, I'd be happy to try and find an answer for you on that question and see whether there has been any research done about it. But really good question. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. So I hope that satisfies that question for you, Joe, there. But so the next question is from Dan Hotchkiss, and this is a really interesting question actually. So what are your opinions on biodegradable balloons?
It depends what you mean by biodegradable. Latex balloons, so the normal balloons that you get, they're latex, they're rubber, they will biodegrade. It's the mylar, the shiny foil type, that don't biodegrade very well, and we would never advocate that anybody would release those. The biodegradable balloons, the latex ones, are still an issue because, as I mentioned, if they are released into the air, they have to go up into a very high altitude to undergo brittle fracture because they freeze, and so they fracture, and they'll still come back down to earth, obviously, but they'll be in smaller pieces, which are then still a litter issue. But at least they don't come down as balloons, which can, cause blockage. But obviously, the micro, from all the small animals will still be filter feeding those small pieces of plastic. So I don't believe in balloon releases overall. I'm not a party pooper though. I do like balloons, I just don't like them being released. So whatever you do, biodegradable balloons, if you're going to buy balloons, buy the rubber ones that will biodegrade, and dispose of them properly, and make sure that you keep tight hold of them, and that, tied with a biodegradable string, and that if they're going to be used, they're never used for releases.
Thank you for that question.
You can have things
answer.
like balloon popping parties, like everybody does a balloon release and they all stand and watch the balloons float in the air, and you think, yeah, that wasn't very exciting. How about releasing the balloons inside and having, post-COVID, and having all the children go around trying to pop the balloons? It's far more fun than just standing watching a balloon release. There's lots of different ideas that you can do, and make it more proactive and more fun rather than polluting the environment.
Diolch yn fawr for that answer there. So Dan, I hope that answers your question. So all I can see now is one final question for you, and it's about livestock feed, and does any livestock feed need to be sold in plastic bags? Good question, because there's an awful lot of plastic bags being used in the industry.
There is. It's all to do with bulk buying as well. It's overall to do with producers, isn't it? And it's not, you need to make sure that you're not unduly affecting the quality of the material that you're selling, because obviously it's expensive and the livestock need to be fed, and you need to make sure that it's kept in a good condition. So it's not that it's the plastic in itself. There's nothing wrong with having a reusable plastic that you then, if you buy it from the wholesaler, that you could take it back to the wholesaler and get it refilled. We're not saying that all plastic has to be banned. What we're saying is that it should be reused and recycled, and if possible, we would find an alternative. But if that food stock is, for example, susceptible to moisture, it would need to be in something that is watertight, and that generally is plastic. And we're not against all plastic. We just need to make sure that we reduce it as much as possible. So you would go back to your agricultural merchant, and you would, there will be, with the extended producer responsibility, a facility then to either reuse or recycle that. But any food stuff that, we must make sure that we're not increasing the amount of food waste. That's unforgivable. But what we do just need to do is just make sure that all of these easily solvable single-use plastics are dealt with immediately, and then we start getting into the routine of everybody now takes their plastic bag to the, a cloth bag to the supermarket. Before the carrier bag charges came in, be honest, how many of you took your cloth bags? If we get some legislation that makes it a habit, that makes it easy for people, that it's easy to dispose of, or an alternative is easy, then please, you can do that. So with regard to any food stuff, if it needs to be stored in plastic for it to keep its length of life, then what we need to do is either it becomes reusable or very easily recyclable at the point of purchase.
Yeah, good points there. Thank you. We've got another question here from, I think it's Mafalda Costa, saying they'd be happy to pay extra costs for environmentally friendly packaging, but also very aware that low-income families of Wales will not be able to cope with significant increase in prices. And are they being represented in the consultations?
It's a very good point. When I asked about the deposit return systems, if you imagine if somebody was to buy a 6-pack of cans, if that's 25p, that's an extra £1.50 on that 6-pack. And if they were to be charged 25p for a big bottle, a 3-litre bottle, then they'll buy the 3-litre bottle. So there's unintended consequences to everything that we do. But the idea is obviously it is a deposit return system. You will get all of that money back. So there is the initial outlay, and it is to be, we know that we'll be going into a recession post-COVID, and it is something, and we do have a lot of families who are on the poverty line, and so we do need to consider that, which is why it will be a gradual thing, and people, there will be a lot of information given out, and hopefully there'll be a gradual transition, and people will be made aware. One of the things I will point out is that there are a lot of low-income families, but the things that we buy generally in the plastic containers are non-essential items. So if you want to buy some fizzy pop, that's a non-essential item. There's a whole discussion around milk bottles, and you may notice that some of the countries advocate that milk bottles aren't included in the deposit return system. So there are non-essential items, and if you've got people on, who are less well off, they make that choice. This is a non-essential item that I want to have, but I'm going to pay the 25p, but I'll get the 25p back if it's 25p, whatever the deposit is, but I will get it back next time I come back to the shop. So, there'll be the initial outlay, but then they will get that back. But yes, it is something that is being very much considered, the impact on low-income families.
We lost Manon. Seems like we might have.
I think we might have lost Manon. So I'm just looking at Lindy Rich. You're saying you're using the reusable net vegetable fruit bags at Sainsbury's. Well done. That's one of the things I would suggest people try to do. Is I have them obviously. Is to just try to think about every time you go shopping if there's anything that you can do now. Everything that we do locally can influence what's going on. My local supermarket got so fed up of me going in and saying, why are your mushrooms always in those plastic containers with the wrapping? Why is it every time I come in, the loose mushrooms are empty? So they've got to, they know, maybe they roll their eyes when I come in, but, you can make a difference. And if you ask, these supermarkets have a lot of, it's where most of us shop. But if they see that it's becoming an issue, then you can have an influence on them. And it is something it's worthwhile, again, just contacting their customer services. So please try to just do everything that you can yourself, just to reduce your plastic. And every time you go to buy something, you think, why is this in plastic? Contact the manufacturer, because if they start getting lots of emails and things from people, then they'll start changing their ways.
Thank you. I don't know if you can hear me now. Can you hear me now, Jill? Yes. Okay. Lovely. I'm back again.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
So we've just got a few minutes left. So unless there are any other burning questions, I don't think there are. Can't see anything coming in right now. We can draw this session to a close. Again, Jill, thank you so much for that informative.
Could I just say thank you to everybody? But sorry, Manon, can I just say thank you very much to everybody for taking the time to listen, because I appreciate how busy everybody is, and everybody is sick to death of looking at screens and Zoom meetings and everything. So thank you for listening and for taking part in the polls. I really appreciate it.
It's been a really good interactive session, and again, thank you, Jill, and thank you to everybody for taking part in this.